Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today's breaking news is that Ukrainian forces have been able to continue an advance in Vovchansk after encircling a large Russian group, around half a battalion tactical group, within the area of the Vovchansk Chemical Plant, near the Vovcha River. We were able to get news that apparently Ukrainian forces, now dealing with a greatly weakened Russian line within the center of the city, have been able to advance out of the built-up area and into the northern suburbs closer to the meatpacking plant, which is just to the top right or top left of the screen in which you're seeing right here. From what we understand, Ukrainian forces are now dealing with a greatly weakened Russian Federation's armed forces within the area, especially after the surrounding and surrender of 400 Russian soldiers of a battalion tactical group that was captured within the area of the Vovchansk Chemical Plant, which we can actually see on satellite picture right here. This is the Vovchansk Chemical Plant in which the Russians were surrounded and captured in. The Ukrainians now appear to be conducting offensive efforts from the built-up area, which is what we call the area comprising most of the commie blocks within the city, and it looks as though they are beginning to advance northwards and possibly westwards, attempting to conduct an encirclement of the Russian forces that may be near to the central hospital area and once again closer to the Vovcha River on its western end. This is once again showing us that Ukrainian efforts within this area are going incredibly well as far as a counterattack is concerned, considering that urban fighting is one of the slowest and most arduous forms of combat, but we also are able to hear that the Russians are doing very poorly so far during this offensive as well, with of course, the capture of about half a battalion tactical group yesterday and the greatly weakened and attritive forces still fighting inside the city. We are expecting that the Ukrainians will most likely be able to make a lot of forward progress over the next few days and may be able to push the Russians almost entirely or completely out of Vovchansk within the next few days, given the current combat, or more so strategic situation in the area and the tactical situation inside the city of Vovchansk itself. Meanwhile, we also got to see some very interesting news that the Russians are doing so well in the war. Of course, that's sarcastic, but they are doing so well in the war that they are actually raising taxes within the Russian Federation for all income levels. According to the information that we have from British intelligence, Russia is raising its taxes to keep the war going, and Russia expects the tax changes to generate about an additional 29 billion US dollars in additional budget revenues for the 2025 calendar year. This is once again showing us that the raising of taxes is something that is actually very, very rarely done in modern war. The United States has never raised its tax brackets as a direct correlation to being inside of a conflict, unless if it was World War II, which was the only time that we've ever seen tax increases being made pertinent to a war. Beyond that, we have never seen, inside the United States in particular, tax increases because of the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, any U.S. military interventions like Grenada or Panama, or any other major conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan. We have never seen that tax brackets have been increased in their rates to try and pay off a war such as that. And we are seeing that the Russian Federation is starting to do that. And this is showing us that they have truly reached the bottom of the financial barrel. There is no more money left within the Russian Federation for them to be able to keep this war effort running. So now the actual taxpayer in the Russian Federation is going to have to pick up the burden of financing the war, which 29 billion is actually not that much. The war in Ukraine right now is costing the Russians about $200 billion annually in terms of government expenditures on an annual basis. That does not include ancient stockpiles of weapons that have been put into frontline service and have been lost, which of course increases the amount of monetary loss for the Russians, but not on an annual spending level. But to accomplish this tax increase, the corporate income tax will increase from 20% to 25%, and the highest corporate tax rate will rise from 15% to 22%. But nevertheless showing that the Russian Federation is starting to really ramp up their abilities to try and keep the war going, considering that we believe that a collapse in this Russian war effort will most likely be happening by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And it looks as though they are trying to find a way to make more money so that way they can prolong the collapse that is inevitable at this point, at least on a military level. Meanwhile, down in the area of Rostov-on-Don, things appear to be going incredibly poorly, as we have gotten word that there is an ongoing riot or prison riot within the area. From information that we have, convicts that were held inside of a Russian prison, specifically pertaining to a certain extremist group within the Middle East in the mid-2010s. Unfortunately, we can't say the name of that here on YouTube, but you can look around for them. I'm sure everyone knows who I'm talking about. Apparently was able to conduct a prison riot and are now holding prison workers hostage right now inside the city of Rostov-on-Don. This video is showing some Russian police moving into the area.
Вот готовится он еле-еле-еле-еле. Вот это спецназ ФСИНа. Видите, у них эти самые уже ФСИН.
We don't know how the prisoners really broke out and conducted a riot and then ended up holding prison workers hostage. We really have no idea. But it is starting to show a very interesting kind of a theme. And from what we can hear, the extremists are demanding their release or they will take the lives of the hostages. At least that's what I've heard lately. The story is very blurred and very murky because it's brand new and it just came out about an hour ago. But nevertheless, it is giving us an idea that even the prisoners and inmates in the Russian Federation are starting to sense weakness on the Russian governmental level and are trying to take advantage of that weakness. And of course, we'll be trying to keep up to date with this whole prison riot ordeal. We don't really know how it will go, but still it is an interesting one to hear. But we have even crazier breaking news coming out of Kyiv because we were able to hear it today, according to an official Ukrainian announcement, that the first Zircon Hypersonic missile interception has occurred and was successful. The armed forces of Ukraine has made history today as the first true hypersonic missile, the Zircon, was shot down over Ukraine, which is absolutely insane. According to the information that we have, and from what we understand, the Ukrainian armed forces have withheld this information for some time from the public. The interception actually occurred about a month and a half ago in late March, but nevertheless, the information was finally published today by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense because they were wanting to make sure and corroborate the information that it was in fact a Zircon hypersonic missile instead of a Khinzal or any other kind of comparable missile system. The Zircon is an actual, true hypersonic missile by every single measure. I'm actually going to try and get you all a picture of one here really quickly, and I should be able to grab that right here. But this is a graphic depiction of what a Zircon hypersonic missile would look like. And from what we understand, this thing is able to travel at hypersonic speeds all the way to impact on the target, unlike the Khinzal, because many people have heard that the Russians have been using hypersonic missiles, such as the Khinzal, against Ukraine for quite some time, but that's really more of a misnomer. The Khinzal is an upgraded Iskander-M intermediate-range ballistic missile, meaning that while it is able to achieve hypersonic speeds during some of its flight, when it's finally reaching its target, it is actually going supersonic or almost subsonic speeds at some points. The Zircon, however, is able to keep up the hypersonic speed from launch to impact, meaning that that missile is by all means a hypersonic missile. The fact that they were able to intercept this missile and destroy it is something of a feat in itself. The Zircon is supposed to be a completely uncatchable, undestroyable missile, just because of its sheer speed alone. And the fact that the Ukrainians intercepted one with what we assume to be a Patriot missile battery is showing that even Russia's best technological efforts are ending up falling short, and they're not able to successfully make a missile that can get through a Western air defense system. This is their best effort, and even that best effort has ended up failing on trying to actually make a viable weapon system that could make it through that air defense. This means as a whole that the United States does not really have to worry all too much about the hypersonic missile craze that has been going around the world. Many people in the Western world have believed, due to the propaganda value of the hypersonic missile, that it is completely uncatchable and makes all Western defenses completely pointless and moot, which is something that we have believed because we didn't have any information to contradict that statement. However, as the Ukrainians are starting to show, even with a small amount of Western air defenses, hypersonic missiles can easily be defeated. Not only the Khinzal, but the Zircon as well, although we do not know if Russian hypersonic missiles are on the same level as Chinese hypersonic missiles, which are still a serious concern to U.S. strategic interests within the Eastern Asian region. And not only that, they are a major military concern, considering that a hypersonic missile from China could actually be far faster, at least according to the information that we have, and still may pose a massive challenge, if not be completely impossible, for Western air defenses to attempt an interception, at least at this point. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that Russian hypersonic missiles, as far as we are concerned, have practically been made moot as far as a concern for Western air defense and Western strategists to plan and prepare for. Moving on from that news, it appears that the Germans will also be helping out greatly once again with Ukraine's air defense, as they have created a brand new Skynex Leopard. This is actually a Leopard 2, or really this is more so a picture that they tried to approximate what it will look like, but it's going to be on a Leopard 1 or a Leopard 2 hull, and they're going to put a Skynex 35mm autocannon turret on top of it. The aim is to create a modern Gepard, as the Gepard, which is currently in service with Ukraine right now, is actually an anti-aircraft system that was built off of the Leopard 1. This system will be a lot more modernized and a lot more effective than the Gepard, although we've already seen that the Gepard is wildly efficient so far in the war. The Skynex will take that efficiency and bump it up to the next level for the large part. We will be waiting to see if we actually ever get any good information about the Skynex Leopard system, as we are hearing that Rheinmetall is apparently attempting to manufacture this specifically for the Ukrainian market, and they do not have any plans on other markets or other export markets rather than Ukraine, so we're going to see if that ever makes it off the ground. But at this point, we're not entirely sure if it would or wouldn't. We're just going to have to largely see what Rheinmetall is able to do, considering that this is a private venture, and because private ventures are a very finicky sort of a subject in the military acquisitions world or the military industry world, this may end up falling completely flat on its face. The Ukrainians may not be interested in purchasing the system, but nevertheless, it is an effort by Germany to try and make more innovative and more robust anti-aircraft systems that would be usable in a modern war like the one we're seeing right now with the mass use of FPV and kamikaze drones, and hopefully we will see that this thing has a pretty positive impact on the war effort if it's ever introduced into Ukrainian service. Meanwhile, we were also able to get a very interesting statement today from President Zelensky in a peace talks inside of Switzerland. According to the statement that Zelensky said, he said that he has never said that China is an enemy of Ukraine. He said that Ukraine has one enemy. It's Putin. He attacked us. As for friends, friends are those who help when it is difficult. And Zelensky said, I would like China to be a friend of Ukraine. Now, this is something very interesting, and we have touched about this on our live stream a little bit about Chinese-Ukrainian relations, and I think that it'd be very important to break this down right here and explain why, at least on my personal opinion level, I would not be a fan of this. Of course, it's up to y'all, and let me know in the comment section below. Do you think it would be good for the Chinese to help out Ukraine, or for Ukraine to accept Chinese help? I would like to know what y'all would think, but let me explain what I know so far about the Chinese and what would most likely come out of a statement like this. And let's break down the statement and see what it means at a different level. Ukraine is saying that the enemy of their enemy is their friend. That's pretty much what the statement is saying. But the second part is saying that friends for Ukraine are countries that help when it is difficult, meaning that they give Ukraine some sort of monetary or physical support in this current war. And he said that he would like China to be a friend of Ukraine, meaning that he would like China to provide some sort of material support, either military equipment or monetary assistance to Ukraine during this war effort. Now, a statement like that is actually a little dangerous, and I'll explain why. Not necessarily from Zelensky, but from the fact of trying to open up a Chinese-Ukrainian dialogue for physical materials or support. The People's Republic of China has a very aggressive way that they conduct foreign diplomacy. It's not aggressive in the terms of military aggression, it is aggressive in its form of economic aggression, or economic dominance against smaller countries. The Chinese have employed in their economic strategy or their sphere building strategy called the One Belt, One Road program, that they would like to try and dominate smaller countries within Central Asia and East Africa, along with the Middle East, to try and create a sphere of influence that would span around the Indian Ocean, and China would be the main controller of the sphere of influence, thus gaining all of the benefits and monetary incentives out of building a sphere like this for a foreseeable time, most likely decades into the future, much like the United States has ever since it became the leader of the Western sphere at the end of World War II. Ukraine asking for monetary assistance from China, or really saying that they would like for China to give them some sort of support and be a quote-unquote friend, is something that the Chinese are probably more than keen to hop on board with. The Chinese are trying to find any way to grow the One Belt, One Road program and will take any advantages where they can. By the way, to lay out the geographical area of the One Belt, One Road program, it spans all the way from Eastern Asia, pretty much all the way out into the area of Taiwan and the Philippines, and then spans all the way westwards to Turkey. And then not only that, the Chinese are trying to draw in the European Union or Europe as a whole to be a massive trading partner. So that way China doesn't just have a sphere of influence, their sphere of influence has a major trade route by both land and sea that eventually makes its way into Europe. And they're hoping that Europe in the future, instead of America, will be their primary customer and consumer of Chinese products and Chinese services. Moving way on into the future, we're talking about 2 decades, 3 decades from now. This is the Chinese plan. And it's called national rejuvenation, which Xi Jinping says should happen by 2049, which is a bit of an ambiguous date. It's really just one to make sure that everything has a timetable to work off of. But the reason why 2049 was picked is because that is the 100th year anniversary of the foundation of the People's Republic of China, which we all call China in the modern day. Anyways, the Chinese would love to be able to get their foot into Eastern Europe. They already have the Russians largely under their belt because the Russians are so economically destitute, as we can see by them raising taxes and also dealing with massive financial collapses over the past few days, that the Chinese have been able to really make sure that the Russians are big fans of the Chinese economic system and have really become a resource colony for them. However, if China can secure Ukraine, they are getting an extremely good deal. One thing that many people do not know is that Ukrainian grain is not shipped to many European countries. In fact, most Ukrainian grain is shipped out overseas into completely different regions of the world, like the Middle East, and then the largest importer of Ukrainian grain is the People's Republic of China. This means that the Chinese actually have a very big incentive to give Ukraine that monetary or physical support that the Ukrainians are looking for, maybe even at the dismay of the Russians, which are inside the Chinese sphere, so that way they can try and indebt Ukraine in the future, much like they've done many other member states of the Belt and Road program, and then draw Ukraine, one of the largest suppliers of grain to China, permanently into the Chinese sphere, completely undermining all Western actions that have been taken so far in the war. The tens of billions of dollars of support that we have given to make sure that Ukraine can survive this war will all be for naught, as the Chinese will slip in right at the end, right at the finish line, and sweep Ukraine right out from under us. And ironically enough, the Ukrainians and Russians would then live side by side as friends within a Chinese sphere, which would be incredibly awkward and incredibly weird, but nevertheless, the Chinese would figure out a way to sort that out and make that happen. A lot like America ended up tying together the French, Germans, and the British at the end of World War II, and actually creating a successful West Germany that France would later partner with to create the very birth of the European Union. It's almost the exact same kind of a thing. And I would have to say that this is something that is very concerning, at least for me on my own personal level. The Chinese are masters at deception, and they are very good at this game. They've done this incredibly well, and they've been able to succeed so far within areas of Eastern Africa and also the Middle East and Central Asia as well. Of course, they don't really do that well on their very own borders. Of course, many nations around them are unfriendly to them, like Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Vietnam, among many others. But nevertheless, we do have to consider that Ukraine has made it very clear today that they would be open to receiving Chinese support, which opens the door for Chinese deception practices to begin, and for the Chinese to tie themselves to Ukraine permanently and make sure that Ukraine could never join the Western sphere, even after we've done all of this effort to get them this far. Of course, that is what I'm seeing at the moment, and generally, considering that this channel is a pro-Western channel supporting Western interests, allowing the Chinese, as we've seen today, a back door into Ukraine is a terrible idea. They are an anti-Western country. They are currently the leader of the anti-Western sphere, if there is a solidified one, and that means that we need to make sure that the Chinese are not involved in Western affairs or pro-Western interests, because they are going to be a naturally destabilizing and negative factor in our processes of doing what we do in the world. But let me know in the comments section below what you think of the statement from President Zelensky and saying that he would possibly be open to receiving support from China, or as he calls it, having a friend that helps out in difficult times. But with that, that is all of the major breaking news that we have today. Beyond the little bit of news down in the Red Sea that a Ukrainian-owned ship was hit by the Houthis today, we don't really have a lot of information on that, and CENTCOM just put that out a little while ago, so I decided not to really cover that too much here in the video, but we will be covering that a little bit later on tonight in our live stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So if y'all want to watch that, you can. But that's all of the major breaking news that we have for today. I got to thank everyone so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, make make sure to subscribe, make sure to comment, and make sure to support us on Patreon. And I got to give a massive shout out to all of our patrons who help to make these video projects possible and help us to continue to cover the news like we are right now. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.